In the early 1960s, both King Kong and Godzilla were at the peak of their popularity. Godzilla had two recent successes on its back, with the original Gojira and Godzilla Raids Again. Check out my reviews for more information. You shameless plug-in, shut up. And despite not having a film for almost 3 decades, Kong's legacy lived on in parodies and re-releases. So it seemed logical to bring these two gods of monsters together. Well, that wasn't exactly the idea at first. Willis O'Brien originally pitched an idea where Kong would fight a creature created by Victor Frankenstein. Being a fan of the Mary Shelley novel, and with the two monsters being quite popular at the time, the concept was quite ridiculous at first glance, but it did prove to have potential as the idea did indeed make its way to screens eventually. Frankenstein Conquers the World was released based off of the idea conceived by O'Brien, and even went on to spawn a sequel called War of the Gargantuars, which proved to be canon to the Godzilla timeline due to the reference in Godzilla against Mechagodzilla out in 2002. Anyway, in 1962, producers at RKO and Toho banded together and did the maths. Kong plus his Godzilla equals money! And so the film was born. Well, 2 films, but I'll get to that soon. So what's the plot with this one? A television company is in desperate need of a mascot after hearing tales of a giant gorilla being worshipped on a mysterious island by the name of Faroe Island. 2 employees are sent to bring this giant god back home. Yeah, it should be easy enough. Meanwhile in Japan, Godzilla is unfrozen from his icy tomb a la the conclusion of Godzilla Raids Again and begins to wreak havoc. 2 brains are better than 1, but 2 monsters aren't exactly the same case. Kong is discovered on the island being worshipped by these extremely offensive black fish. Should I be talking about this film? Anyway, after Kong gets a bit funky from the berry juice... hang on, I completely forgot to talk about this. So this berry juice, kind of like the MacGuffin of the plot, is the reason why Kong is such a big boy in this film. Kong is shipped back to Japan, but is awakened thanks to the jackass boss, accidentally. No, not accidentally. Who the hell just steps forward like this and lands on a detonator used in the off chance to kill Kong for protection of Japan and possibly the entire world, which doesn't even work. So it's about here where the plot just kind of stops. It just stops. Yeah, sure, there's a subplot about a plane being destroyed and one of the characters' boyfriends being on it and she goes to investigate his body to identify. What does this have to do with anything? It's introduced about an hour into the film and goes nowhere. Essentially, Kong and Godzilla fight at the end of the film. Yes, the end of the film. Sure, they meet once before, but it's more like... shut the fuck up, you cunt! At the end of the film, it appears that Kong is the ultimate victor. However, there's no evidence that Godzilla has been defeated. It's possible he just swam away, or sparked the legend that there were indeed 2 endings to the film. One where Kong would win, and the other where Godzilla would win. However, this proved to be 95% false. There is a difference in the endings. In the American version, you hear Kong's roar, and in the Japanese version, you hear both roar. Let's talk about these alternate versions whilst on the subject matter. I haven't seen the Japanese version as of yet. Even though the film was recently released on Blu-ray, they couldn't even bother putting the Japanese version on the disc or any special features for that matter, not even a trailer, what the hell? The main difference is the structure of the film. In the Japanese version, it plays out like a film, 3 acts and all. But the American version, there's these very dull news sections spliced into the film to essentially fill in the audience of what is exactly happening in the last scene beforehand. Yeah, despite the fact the previous scene just explained it. It's like me going to the toilet and then a news reporter coming in saying, Lee Smith has just took a shit, it was a long and thick and took about 30 seconds. Oh, we have just received confirmation, he has wiped his ass. Mother of God. Yeah, by the 90-minute mark, it's safe to say you'll be preparing a toaster bath. Okay, rant over. Let's talk about the characters. Majority of them are just bland cannon fodder. But honest to God, I do like the 2 main protagonists. I enjoy the banter they have together, and their boss is a lot of over-the-top fun, despite looking like a Japanese Steve Buscemi. The monsters are a bit more interesting. Godzilla looks great, from the side at least. His face from the front looks a bit off. This film was the debut of the more classic reptile-like Godzilla that became synonymous with his pop culture appearance. Also debuting is Akira Fuku's iconic Godzilla team. Kong, on the other hand... It's viewed that this film is not canon to the previous Kong films, but it's possible. It's like Kong's son may have swam from Skull Island and found new residence in Faroe Island. The natives began worshipping him, found the berry juice. The fight scene at the end of the film is quite fun, however, with Kong using his mobility as to his advantage and Godzilla using his brute force. Despite being fun, there are some parts where the fight looks a bit, yeah. So, that's King Kong vs. Godzilla. It's one of those so bad it's kind of good films. As a kid I loved it, but now that I'm older I see the major flaws it has. I'm sure the Japanese version is superior and I will check it out one day. Despite the hideous Kong design, formulaic structure and cringy new scenes, I still recommend it. Grab some friends, some cans and you'll be grand.